Bringing a fresh new perspective on the challenges and issues that face our criminal justice system and their impact on all New Yorkers. This is In Your Court with your host, President of the New York State Supreme Court Officers Association, Patrick Cullen.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another installment of In Your Court. I am your host, Patrick Cullen, and I am the President of the New York State Supreme Court Officers Association, proudly representing law enforcement professionals in our courts throughout New York City and the lower Hudson Valley. It's a pleasure to have you all with me again today as we discuss the topics and issues facing our justice system and the world of organized labor. And we have a very interesting program today for you with two guests who are joining me in studio to do just that. This program was developed as yet another resource to communicate with our membership on many issues, big picture items that affect us all. Things that may not specifically touch on day-to-day operations, but how elected officials and other labor unions and decision makers in our municipalities are addressing the complications and challenges that we, as public employees, continue to face. I have always said that this program is about our members and for our members, and I want to let you know that the feedback is exceptional, and the program is widely well received. I'm open to it all, positive or critical, because if I am unwilling to listen to all perspectives, then communication becomes stagnant. I will continue to strive to provide the most up-to-date information on all the topics concerning court officers, because the availability and accessibility of information is paramount. This is why, on a much more local issues level, we are launching our app to our membership. This adds yet another level of engagement between the union's executive board and our membership. Details on how to begin using it will be available within days. It joins our website, email, and text system, and all social media platforms that we utilize to remain constantly committed to cultivating communication. I am very proud of the advances in communication that our board has embraced, and as such, an important resource to share all the types of information that we must. But it's even more crucial to allow us to listen to our brother and sister officers so that we can all work together to continue to improve our profession. Our first guest today is the Sheriff of Suffolk County, New York. He has had an extensive career, starting with the New York City Department of Corrections, including as a Deputy Commissioner. He was recently reelected to a new 4-year term, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Sheriff Errol Toulon to In Your Court. Sheriff, welcome.
Thank you very much, Pat.
Appreciate you coming on. And before we get into some of the issues and topics representing the people that you lead, introduce yourself to our listeners a bit, a background, life, career.
Sure. I'm a Bronx-born native. Grew up in the South Bronx. I went to Cardinal Hayes High School. My last 2 years in high school, I was a bat boy for the New York Yankees. That's my biggest claim to fame in life. After graduating high school, I went to community college where I got my associate's degree, and then decided to follow my father's footsteps and worked 22 years with the New York City Department of Correction on the uniform side. Had to take a little bit of a hiatus due to illness, but came back 10 years later as a Deputy Commissioner of Operations. And then several other opportunities presented itself that led me to actually running for sheriff and being elected in 2017.
Yeah, so what were some of the things that made you decide to run for office in a career of civil service and public employment? You know, I think it's important, and I think we all stress at a lot of the meetings that we have, you know, labor's voice labor's voice in elective politics is so critical to what we do. And your position's a little different than a legislative one. But what led you to run for sheriff?
Well, you know, I've told many people I was forced to resign from the New York City Department of Correction because I wouldn't fudge the numbers. So from January until I actually entered the race in September, I was unemployed.
Right.
Even though I had a doctorate in education and also was the Deputy Commissioner in the third largest penal institution in the United States, I still couldn't find employment. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to market myself, not knowing that I would actually win the race.
It's an incredible story, and here you are now reelected to a new term. Happenstance, and you are where you're supposed to be, they say, right? So, and we're happy that you are. What are some of the responsibilities of your office that some of our listeners may not be aware of? The Suffolk County Sheriff's Office.
Sure. When I took over in 2018, we had almost 1,300 employees, 900 on the correction side, 240 deputy sheriffs, and 130 civilian personnel for a $180 million budget. We had almost 1,400 inmates in 2 facilities in Riverhead and Yaphank. But not only do we have 2 jails, we also have deputy sheriffs that not only patrol the eastern part of Long Island with the East End towns, but we also do civil litigations, we do evictions, we have a Marine Bureau that patrols the East End, we have a warrant section, and a Domestic Violence Bureau, just to name a few.
So you're running really, a large police department in what is, an enormous county in New York, and also, a very diverse county when you look at economically, very diverse. What are some of the challenges that you face now as the sheriff, now going into your second term, that you see the things that you're looking to tackle?
I was able to go to El Salvador for a week, my first 3 months in 2018, to learn more about MS-13. We still have gang-related issues in Suffolk County, but more importantly, we have human trafficking issues, which is a greater issue for our federal partners, as in several meetings I've been in with them. And so we're working hard to combat human trafficking issues in Suffolk County. We want a better quality of life. We're probably one of the highest, tax counties in the United States. And, we want to make sure that the residents get every dime, being safe, secure, want to lead the lifestyles that they want to lead inside their homes, feel safe when they go out with their families. And also, we want to make sure that those future generations want to stay, in Suffolk County, to be close to their relatives, their parents, and their grandparents. So, that's one of my primary goals.
Yeah, that's a really an incredible story. We've heard it recently also with some other elected officials taking, it upon themselves to research a little bit of what you're looking to do. And again, we're so pleased to have you on the program, is because many of my members are Suffolk County residents. And so, a lot of what we're discussing today really affects the day-to-day life of a lot of members of the SCOA. So upon your initial election, what's one of the biggest changes you've made in the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office?
One is to really make the men and women that work for the Sheriff's Office feel valued and respected for the jobs that they do. I don't think too many people know what the members of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office does, or even what the sheriff does. And
right.
Many people don't even know the Suffolk County Sheriff is the highest-ranking law enforcement official in Suffolk County.
Right.
And so bringing about new training for my staff, and that's also including our civilian staff, because they are equally as important to our organization as our uniform staff, but also training our technology, the equipment that they use, and make sure that they're better prepared. But more importantly, the engagement with me and the senior union officials,
right,
to make sure that if there are any concerns, we don't wait until our monthly union meeting. You can bring it to me right away. We can really try to address any potential rumors or anything that people may hear, or our members' concerns, our staff's concerns. Because if they have a safe and comfortable work environment, I know I'm going to have a more productive employee.
Sure.
And so for me, it's more important of hearing my staff. And I like to walk around all areas of the sheriff's office and just have a conversation to, how are your kids doing, to, did you see the hockey game?
It goes a long way, I have to tell you, and I wish that some of the folks that run the Office of Court Administration were listening to that, because we're a law enforcement agency run by civilians, and that mentality of I'm one of you doesn't exist with us so much. Our highest-ranking officials are oftentimes cut off at the knees and not allowed to kind of look in proactively to what it is that our members need, what our courts need, what our employees need, because you couldn't be more right. A grounded employee who feels valued is a productive one, and morale is everything in law enforcement. I think you'd agree with your storied and varied career.
Yeah, 100% correct. And, what I saw in my 22 years, or really 25 years almost, on Rikers Island, and then, being the sheriff, Equally as important to me is really speaking to the members of our community.
Yeah.
How do we keep them safe? What are the issues that they're confronted with? Because, we have almost 1.4 million residents in Suffolk County, all faced with very different issues. And so for me, it's equally as important to get out, talk to our community, see what's going on. And sometimes I can't help them in my capacity as sheriff, but I can help them in my capacity as an elected official.
Sure.
So, I can use maybe some will of my office to get things done for our constituents, whether they're sheriff's-related issues or not. And so for me, I'm a people person. I love to talk to people, good, bad, or indifferent. To me, I think everyone needs to be heard and at least be part of the conversation, whether their voice is a solution or not.
Yeah, there's no question. And the fact that you do have those kind of resources that you're at the ready to, willingly participate in the community, not just from the public safety perspective, but in any way you can, speaks to your character and integrity as the sheriff and as an elected official. Let's talk about public safety and public safety in general in New York. I mean, it's kind of a silly, but in general, where we stand. What's your take coming from where you stand with your career and where you stand now?
If we look at New York City or we look at Suffolk County, of course, there are two different dichotomies that's going on. I think everybody in the law enforcement community realizes that the bail reform legislation that was enacted and took place January of 2020 wasn't the best thing for our community. It made us unsafe. There were more horrific crimes that were occurring. Individuals that should have been incarcerated should have stayed in jail.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, a first-time offender, low-level offense, maybe let's give that man or woman an opportunity to return back to the community and support their families. But we remove the judge's discretion.
Yes.
When we see individuals that are constantly committing crimes over and over again, someone has to ultimately say, you know what, enough is enough. I had to go against my own party. I'm a Democrat. I went up to Albany against the bail reform legislation. Received some negative criticism for coming out, but I do feel in my heart of hearts, being in law enforcement for such a long time, that it was the best thing to do and the right thing to do to stand up to anyone, no matter what the political party was and whoever the person was, stand up to them and say, I don't believe this is right and this is why.
Yeah, I think everything in this life is about choices and consequences, and when we remove consequences, the choices, the gamut of choices that are available to people, widens. And I can get away with this. Why can't I get away with this? And I mean, this is a general conversation and testifying, legislative gatherings, which I've done myself on a number of issues and topics, is daunting. And sometimes you do, have to stand against the grain a bit, but it's about conviction and it's about principle and not a lot of foresight was given to the bail reform movement, and I think they jumped the gun. And I think that where certain areas in New York are reaping what they sowed, and I think it's damaging. But then we have to look at, you say, Suffolk County is one of the highest taxed counties in really in America, I think, and at the end of the day, are you driving away your tax base because it's less safe, right? And then you're unable, at some point, your budget is hit, and you can't provide the services that people have come to expect from the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office, and it's an ecosystem. And so if people don't feel safe, it trickles down, and there's damage done everywhere. Would you agree?
Right, and not only do I agree, I think one of the things that our legislators failed to do was include the law enforcement community in the discussion in the drafting of this bill. And I think listen, I don't have to be included, but if you put some well-intentioned law enforcement committee together to say, this is what we're proposing to do, how does it affect you, and what is your perception of how it can affect public safety, would at least have everybody on board to a discussion. But when we're excluded, and then we have to deal with the ramifications, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's been an ongoing problem. And we talk, there's a lot of talk about police and communities, and I think that, a lot of some issues have been resolved, some may never be resolved, but the communities that need to get together are law enforcement agencies and elected officials on the statewide level, because they have to be in a room together. You cannot just, push political philosophy from one perspective without having some input. And you may disagree with that input, but you have to give it the credence that it deserves. And I think that's where we're at with the bail reform problem. There are now some calls to look into it, and maybe we have a new governor. We're going to have a new mayor in New York City. Is there a time now to try and revamp it, make it so that we're a little more safe, while still, holding on to the principles that drove it so far in the first place? I think that the time is ripe for that.
Right. And, we were all able to come together when Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 203, community, law enforcement, elected officials.
Right.
And so why couldn't we do the same with this legislation?
Right. I also point out, too, and this is why I enjoy having people from many different agencies on this program, is we're all under the same umbrella. We're all, peace officers ultimately, and police officers, and sworn, same oath. Mm-hmm. And we have to work together, just the same way as legislators of different backgrounds and beliefs systems and political philosophies have to work together, and we all have to come together. New York's an umbrella, and we've always taken everybody underneath it. But we have to kind of find our way underneath it, too. We have to kind of all work together. And I'm hoping that this new legislative session beginning in January is kind of a new start for New York and labor and workers, and especially on the uniform side of things. I just want to talk about a couple of other kind of social issues that are uniform personnel are dealing with: mental health and guns. Starting with mental health, a lot of people talk about mental health. We're seeing a lot of issues, mental health services being cut. The pandemic didn't do anybody any favors on the mental health side of things. How's Suffolk County looking at that type of thing from a public safety perspective?
So, there's many, especially now, I believe we just finished suicide prevention, last month. Many individuals, and I've encouraged my staff, especially, for those that are incarcerated, and also, the members of service.
Yes.
This is a very difficult time where loved ones are lost. There could be financial loss in the household, health issues, marital or relationship issues that are going on.
Right.
And so from a supervisory aspect to also, a colleague aspect, to check in on each other. And don't be afraid to communicate that there may be a problem. If you're not going to come to the administration, go to your union officials.
Yes.
Because the union officials are the ones who have the boots on the ground, that want to help their members. And they're the ones that can be that intermediary between the administration and the person that's in need. Because I'm not worried about someone that's in need. I'm more worried about getting that person the help that they need.
Right.
That's what I want to do. And, when I speak to the union officials that work in my organization, my goal is to get them the help. The problem that may have occurred because of the issue that they're faced with, we can deal with that. But more importantly is, how do I get that man or woman into a better place so that they can continue to live, support their families, and work in the career that they chose?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that out. That when we talk about mental health, we're talking about, especially on the law enforcement end of things, people see some tough things, and it's a tough career path, and people are struggling. And like I said, the last 22 months or so haven't done us any favors. But the mental health of the law enforcement profession is so critical. And our union, we provide confidential guidance and referrals to people who may need the help. But you're right; it takes all of us to look out for each of our brothers and sisters. The person who lockers to the right of you, the person who lockers to the left of you. You got to look out for them, and they should be looking out for you. Guns. It's a big issue in America. We just saw this week another school shooting, and I hate to pose the question this way: what do we do? What do we do about the gun epidemic, the problem that it poses, especially with kids?
Just from my little bit of research, it's never the person. I should say never. It very infrequently is it the person that has a registered firearm. Yeah. We do see it's the illegal firearms that are more problematic when it comes to the issue that we may have seen just yesterday in Michigan, I believe. Yes. And then also when we've seen other active threats that have occurred, crimes that have been committed, throughout our state. And so I think we need to, I I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
And I think it's really going to take a panel or a collective group of minds to really try and figure out data points and patterns that are occurring, crimes that are occurring, where these firearms can be traced back to. Is a little bit above me, but I do think that we really need that conversation in New York State.
Yeah, I think the firearm issue in the country, like I said, it's an epidemic, and it's starting to really trickle down to our kids. I think it's a gang problem doesn't help, and we'll get into that in just a second. But and the youth, how we help them. But I think a good step forward legislatively, and some of my members may even disagree with me on this, but the red flag legislation that's been passed, so that if like I said, we're all looking out for each other. If you see somebody that's acting erratically, and maybe that they have fascination with firearms, or they have firearms, or anything like that, you can at least ask your local law enforcement agency to kind of investigate it. And I think that may go a long way. I think social media, as much as I really despise a lot of what it does, points out investigatively what people may be up to or thinking. And so, you're right. I guess we don't have the answer, because if we did, we would have enacted it already, because we've lost so many people. I know so many kids, which is, heartbreaking. But I appreciate your take on it. And speaking of kids, in regard to the youth of Suffolk County, how do you interact with them?
Sure. So prior to COVID, I was in 1 to 2 schools per week talking to students about bullying, vaping, opioids, and gangs, and really got a great understanding, because we are such a big county, on some of the things that they're faced with, learning about when there's lack of supervision, pill parties, illicit sexual behavior that have occurred amongst our youth. And so, if you came into my Yaphank facility, there's a sign that says, my goal is to get to the kids before they get to me, because I'd rather see them in the schools, the playgrounds, or the ball fields, rather than in the 4 walls of the 2 jails that I oversee. And so we have a robust community relations unit that's out in our community, that's in schools. We have we partner with the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation in the Say Something program and the Start With Hello. We also have a DOJ program called Gang Resistance Education and Training, the GREAT program. And so, I'm making sure that we're actively involved, not only with our community, but our youth, to address the issues that they're faced with.
Yeah, those are incredible initiatives, because that's where it all starts. And if you can kind of stem the tide with the youth of today, we're looking at a better tomorrow. Okay. And that kind of ties in with, you're starting a new term here, your second term as sheriff. What are some of your goals for the future of the department?
Sure. Well, one goal, we have a START Resource Center, which is a Sheriff's Transition and Reentry team, where we're assisting individuals after they leave jail, not only Riverhead or Yaphank, but if you're returning from state prison or you're involved in the justice system in another state, we're helping you with the resources in the various communities you're returning back to. And then the major sheriffs of America have appointed me on as part of their intelligence committee. And so what we're looking to do in the sheriff's office is create we have an identified facility, an intelligence network where we can share jail and prison-related issues throughout the United States. And so that's on the top of my list.
That's incredible. You're doing incredible work, Sheriff. I wish we could, continue kind of a conversation. We're running out of time here. It's really, I've witnessed you give a speech recently, and I have to tell you, you're a man of character, a man of the Bronx like myself, like we spoke about earlier before the show started. And it's just a real pleasure to get to sit down and talk to you. The impact that you're having on residents of my union who live in Suffolk County. But I think you're having an impact much further. I think you're speaking to the law enforcement community at large here in New York. You've embraced organized labor, especially out in Suffolk County, to a level that they feel, like you had said earlier, valued. Everybody's input together, combined, creates greater output. So it's been a real pleasure having you on the show today, Sheriff. Welcome you back anytime. Wish you the best of luck. And keep up the good work, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Likewise to you and your family.
You got it. We'll be right back with more In Your Court right after this.
Welcome back to In Your Court with your host, Patrick Cullen, President of the New York State Supreme Court Officers Association.
And welcome back, everybody, to In Your Court. My next guest is the leader of the largest public sector union in Suffolk County, representing over 6,000 members across, I believe, 900-plus civil service titles. He was recently reelected to a third term as president of the Suffolk County Association of Municipal Employees. I'm very happy to welcome my friend Dan Leveler to In Your Court. Dan, welcome.
Pat, it's great to be here. Thanks again.
Always good to see you, my friend. Dan, for our listeners, how'd you get involved with civil service and a career with the county?
So many years ago, I was doing construction work. I was on a very large project, 500 acres, doing like some housing stuff, building, from the ground up. There was a shortage of folks needed in Suffolk County to kind of manage the county's end of oversight for this project. And I had a good rapport with the folks from the county that were on that job, and I had a good reputation on the job. I was interviewed along with 67 other candidates. I didn't know it was a real interview at the time. I thought I just had the job because that's what the guy told me. And it was interesting. They had a criteria that they didn't tell me about, which was we want someone who's going to stand up for themselves. We need somebody, if you're going to come work for the government, you've got to be able to stand your ground when somebody says, hey, I'm going to do it wrong, you've got to be able to say no.
Right.
So they created a fictitious conflict, and I decided I didn't want to participate in the fictitious conflict. So
right.
I stood my ground,
yeah.
and that got me started. That got me started for sure. And I moved up from doing field inspections all the way up to assistant director in sanitation engineering.
Gotcha. And the ability to work for the county, you can move around through different parts of the county and different agencies and different work and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it depends on the job.
Right. Right.
But there are transferable skills. There are certain engineering titles that there are multiple departments that need engineers for. So you could be working one day at Public Works and then be told hey, listen, in 2 weeks you're reporting to the health department, and now you're doing work at the health department, and there are a number of titles. Like again, when we say 924 job titles, there are a number of transferable titles.
That's interesting because most people go to work, do the same thing every day.
Right.
Where there's a lot of flexibility. I'm kind of growing older. So I'm getting older.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't do this anymore, but I can certainly do that. It's very interesting and kind of beneficial to your membership. What spurred your involvement with the union, and eventually as the president?
Yeah. So I initially had gotten involved. The previous president of my unit, so we have 32 units.
Right.
excuse me, inside of AME. And the previous president had served for 22 years. No one ever ran against them. And it was just, I would hear a lot of grumbling.
Right.
He was getting ready to retire. I said, I want to step in. He said, the best I can do is get you, like maybe a shop steward position or something, to that effect. And I said, whatever, I just want to be involved. I want to get involved. I noticed that there's some problems here. I think I have answers. I think I can help. They then had a meeting without me, and they voted unanimously not to let me be a shop steward.
Oh, wow.
And instead made me the executive vice president.
Wow.
He was very upset by that, immediately left. And then I became president. And so that got me involved there. And then a number of years later, it was probably about 6 years later or so, there was some volatility up on the executive level. Different things were happening inside the union that just weren't making any sense.
Right.
We weren't getting, I don't feel we were getting clear answers. Additionally, it felt like there were factions fighting each other.
Right.
And so, just looking at all of those problems, I said, you know what, let's put our hat in the ring. Me and a handful of other folks, and we put together a slate. And we spent about a year training, making sure that we understood what we were stepping into, hoping that it would prepare us for the job. There was 5 additional teams that ran that year as well, so it was a 6-way race.
Wow.
Our team swept it. One of the things that we focused on was we didn't want to get into all the bashing, talking bad about this person or talking bad about that person. What are the problems we're facing? What do we think we can do about it? Where are we going? That's really, when you're considering voting for someone, that's really what you're looking at.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what, myself, my team, we've done a lot of the same things over our few terms. And again, like I said in the opening of the show, it's about communication, availability and accessibility, transparency. The only answer is the honest answer. You might not agree with it, but that's the answer. And we'll work on the issues that may come as a result of it. But if you're not upfront with people,
right,
you're going to have issues, like you said, things just weren't making sense, things weren't working. And so that's, every day I wake up and I'm committed to communicating in the most honest, these days, rapid.
Of course, yeah.
And, clear possible ways, and that's part of why we do this radio program for the extra bit of information we can share with our members. You and AME had an impressive year with your legislative agenda, especially difficult given all that we've been through in the last couple of years.
Sure.
But notably, your priority legislation sponsored by Assemblyman Abate and Senator Brooks grants first responder status to your dispatchers and operators and their counterparts throughout the state, codified into law. What does this legislation mean for the members of your union that it impacted?
So basically, on its face, it's a recognition piece.
Right.
It's an understanding that without that first responder, none of the other first responders get there. What a lot of folks weren't understanding in the public, let's say, was the idea that while you're on the phone with these first responders, as now acknowledged by this bill and signed into law, was that during those critical first moments, a lot of work is going on. They're not just asking questions to keep you talking. They're actually saving your life, and they're doing certain things behind the scenes on, computer systems, coordinating with other folks in the room, getting services dispatched out. And those first couple of moments really make the difference one way or the other, sometimes life and death.
Yeah, no question.
And so having this piece in, getting that recognition, again, for all dispatchers, because if it's true for us, it's true for everyone doing that job, right? And so rather than try and carve this thing up and say we just want it in Suffolk County, we said this job title in general needs to be recognized this way. Our winning argument was, when we were going around and speaking to the various elected officials asking for support for this bill, said, don't take my word for it. Go home and ask someone you trust, friend, a neighbor, family member, whoever you want, and ask them this simple question. When you pick up the phone and you dial those three numbers, that other person on the other end of the line, is that a first responder? And overwhelmingly, they came back with yes.
Yeah.
Now, additionally, what this bill does is allows for that now being recognized as a first responder, all of the first responder legislation that's already in place now also tax on.
Yeah, it gets
so
applied.
federal funding comes into play, right? When the federal government says, hey, first responders, here's a stipend to help deal with first responder costing.
Sure.
These folks are included.
Right.
The PTSD issues that we see all too often in all the first responders, whether it's on the fire side, police, ambulatory, you see that in dispatch rooms across the state, and we know about it from across the country, but now it's being recognized.
Right, so it's not just a name recognition. There's a real-world application of benefits that have been fought for and gained by the union, by many unions over decades, now applied to folks who probably should have had it in the first place.
Sure. Yes.
And that's a big win for your union, right? I mean, for the union, it's a really nice.
Listen, it was definitely
feather in your cap.
Yeah, well, but it was necessary, right?
Sure,
absolutely. It was such an egregious oversight that we knew we had to address it. And honestly, you and I were talking not too long ago. We're probably not the only group that has that distinction, where there is a need to be recognized as a first responder in a way that it currently isn't by law.
And I think that, I know for a fact that we're looking at it with our governmental relations team, and I appreciate all the work that you've already put into it with your team, and we're absolutely looking at how this got done and looking for applications to not just court officers, but other court employees who may be peace officers or may be EMTs and things of that nature. So we all appreciate the work that you put into it, and much like some of the other initiatives we've worked on together over the years, you're absolutely a spearhead, a personality that people gather around when you get behind a project. I think you're the type of person that a lot of people want to get behind that project too, as evidenced by our work together on the Constitutional Convention, through Janus, obviously through COVID. We've communicated regularly, but yeah, we're looking intently at how everything went down with that bill, and like I said earlier, with the new session on the rise in January 2022, this is something we're really intent on addressing. And so we're continuing our conversation here In Your Court with Dan Levler. He's the president of Suffolk AME. The Suffolk County operating budget called for 500 layoffs of your union members, which you worked successfully to avert. Your team also had some impressive successes working with lawmakers on the next budget. What are some of the highlights first of all, how'd you avert the 500 layoffs, and what are some of the highlights you fought for in the upcoming budget?
Well, the saving of the 500 jobs really was about a lot of discussions happening daily, and they were always problems management had to solve, and they were always problems labor had to solve, and so we were working together a lot. And I want to be clear, we had to put ourselves in the same room, so to speak. It's COVID, so we couldn't physically be there.
Right.
But we both had to find solutions to both of our problems.
Right.
So when it got down to it and the budget really didn't have those numbers in them in terms of funding to keep these jobs, it was just part of our daily conversation.
Right.
It was always in there. Sometimes as a joke, don't lay anybody off,
Yeah.
And sometimes real serious. Hey, what if we face this problem again and with 30 people down in this department? That's going to be a disaster, right? And you're just keeping it part of the dialogue.
Yep.
And then when the new budget rolled around and there was additional money there, so where we would have gone down 500 jobs, after this new budget passed, we actually went up by 600. So that's 1,100 families that will be, part of the AME family that wouldn't have been had this job been handled differently.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm gonna just echo your sentiments on exactly the way you handled that. In August of 2020, we were informed that we may be looking at some serious job loss, and we kept our head down. I spoke with many other labor leaders and council and some of our other advisors, and we just continued to say we can't let this happen. We have to focus on let our elected officials, letting them know we're already short 1,000 employees.
Sure.
We can't afford to be down another 600, 800, 1,000. We weren't even sure what the number was at the time, but we did, and we kept focusing on that and really speaking with our elected officials, especially the Judiciary Committee, let them know that the court system will come to an absolute halt if we lose these jobs. Federal money came,
Yes.
and that saved a lot,
It sure did.
a lot of problems and a lot of jobs. Not one job was lost. So, like you said, if you keep your head down and keep working,
Yep.
things are going to find a way to work themselves
Yeah.
out. But
And with the federal money, I think on some level, folks are like, oh, there's this big problem, then boom, federal money happened.
Right.
No, that was by design.
Yeah.
That was the work that you were doing, the work that I was doing to make sure that these conversations and the critical nature of the services that we provide to the community was understood in Washington.
Right.
And it wouldn't happen if folks like you and I weren't making noise on our end.
yeah, that's a really critical point, and I don't do this job for slaps on the back, but it was hard work, and we all did it together in a lot of ways. How are we going to get through this thing? Because it was so unprecedented. And so when the federal money came through, what we have to realize, I think, is the federal money came through one time. We can't rely on it. We can't start building budgets on money that is already
Right.
And that includes this incoming infrastructure.
Sure.
Money coming in from this infrastructure bill and things of that nature. So, the past, let's kind of stay on the political topic a little bit. This past election day had a few surprises, and Long Island, which is long a bellwether of state political tastes, right?
Sure.
Seems to have led the way to a change in philosophy a little bit and a swing back of the pendulum a little bit.
Sure.
Many experts didn't even see it coming. How did AME's election endorsements fare?
So we actually did very well. First and foremost, we have good relationships with both parties.
Right.
I tend to find, despite what anyone might feel, and this may not necessarily be popular, but it tends to be good people, whether they're Republican or Democrats. It tends to be good people that say, I'll put myself in harm's way. I'll stand out there. I'll get this work done. Mm-hmm. I'll go door to door and knock and ask for people's support and and some people vote party lines. Some people vote, personality. Sometimes people vote on hairdos. This person has a better look than that person, whatever that may be. We like to keep good relationships with everyone because they tend to be good people trying to do good things. And we found, for 20 years now, the legislature in Suffolk County has been Democratic.
Right.
It's been, a majority or supermajority at certain points in time. That flipped overnight.
Right.
And, where it looked like maybe the Republicans were going to gain a seat or two, they actually gained a bunch.
Right.
And on election night, almost we're looking at a supermajority.
Right.
overnight,
Right.
and that would go from, the role of trying to put a halt to some bad ideas on the other side of the aisle, and doing work that way, to being entirely responsible to govern in a matter of a few months.
Yeah.
And that's a tall order.
Yeah,
As it
without
stands
question.
now, there's a majority when we include the conservatives that'll be caucusing with the Republicans. But again, we have great labor people in on that. A number of the folks in the Suffolk County Legislature are union leaders.
Yep.
And so it's easy to, we shave hours of conversation off every single topic because they understand.
Yeah, you have members of your union who have gone on to statewide elections.
Sure.
For
Yes.
sure, yeah. So, and it's important to kind of take the experience that you've gotten in work or the union or whatever it might be and apply it to taking it to the next level. And if you're successful, you can really represent a lot of what we're always talking about here on the show or at conferences that we're at or on the phone or whatever it might be. So you have a new district attorney in Suffolk County, I believe, right?
We do.
And like you said, change in county legislative majority. What does it mean for the residents of Suffolk County?
I think what it means is, so you'll see in any district race, a percentage of people, a majority of the percentage of people will vote for one candidate,
Right.
and the minority will vote for another. And those voices tend to get less time from their particular legislator because their legislator, although they're there to work the district, they ran for a particular party. They're going to look to push the ideals that are representative of the party that they're from. And I think in Suffolk County there was a frustration with what was happening nationally, and some questions as to some things that were going on even locally on whether or not this party was making the right moves.
Yeah.
And the voters voted, and they were motivated to do so, and you saw it in the numbers. So now you're going to have folks that really don't feel like they had a voice being represented by a majority of the legislators.
Yeah, sure. I think a little bit of push away from extreme progressivism, and really almost in other places across the country as well, shows you that this is a centrist country.
Yes.
And ultimately, when you put everybody's beliefs in one basket, is going to come out really moderate. And
Right.
when you start to push one way or the other,
Right.
people are going to push back to the center. And I think that's what's happening. And I think we're going to see that in the next couple of years
I would
electively
imagine,
too.
yeah. We're going to see some interesting things in the 22 race as
Sure,
well. So,
sure.
Yeah.
And a statewide election next year as well. COVID has wreaked havoc on our lives so many ways. Discuss it, how it had an impact on your varied job titles specifically.
Well, it was, very interesting problem to deal with. We had folks that were able to do everything they do in the office but work remotely.
Right.
And I got to say, they really loved it. And they did a really phenomenal job. Now, in that little batch of people that could do remote work, there were a few people that took advantage, that bragged about it. I get up in the morning, I sign into my computer, and I go back to sleep.
Right.
That's how you hurt everyone. That's where we end up picking up those disciplinary work kind of items and whatever else.
Yeah.
But then we had those that physically had to report. I mean, you think about, you've got vehicles on the road that have to be on the road in order to do the work that they do, and somebody's got to maintain those vehicles. They've got to be there.
Our members
Right.
have to be physically present.
Physically
yeah.
present,
So
right? So it became this internal thing. Well, why is this person allowed to stay at home? Why do I get to stay home 3 days and have to physically come in 2 days? Hey, why do I have to work every day when other people are sitting home 5 days? And it took a lot of conversations. But getting back to an earlier point, when you talk about communication, telling people what they want to hear just results in a worse situation for leadership.
Yeah.
So you've got to be honest with people, and you've got to say, listen, you can't legally work on, a salt spreading truck in your driveway. You can't do it.
Right.
You've got to come in.
Yeah.
But we got certain concessions from the county. Anyone who felt like they were at risk or that they were nervous, they were allowed to use any time and accruals they had in any combination they wanted. There was no restriction on, if you wanted to be out, you felt your life was threatened, you were allowed to make that choice. We had the presumption if anybody got COVID, anybody that came in and worked, the presumption was that they got COVID at work, and therefore they would have the workers' comp be able to cover them. So, There was a lot of discussions and a lot of people, again, if you tell them what they want to hear, they're going to be happy. But then when they realize that's not true, they're going to be really unhappy. When you tell them what it actually is, not everybody's going to be happy all the time. And you've just got to deal with it.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that comes with leadership.
Yeah, we had so many tough conversations with facing that. Exactly, like when it came to testing early on in COVID, people wanted, where can I get a test? Well, this is where I know you can get a test, but other than that, I don't have a lot of information because we were searching for information. I'm not going to lie to you so that I get off the phone with you. I'm going to try and figure out how to solve your problem and also learn so that I can also try and help solve the next person's problem too. It was tough, but here's the question. How should leaders like you and I be approaching seriously increasing COVID numbers and variants? Can we afford to come to a halt again?
I got to say, that question to me has just broader implications, right?
Yeah.
So it's about our workforce for sure, but it's about the services our workforce provides. And I don't know that the public is really going to be able, no matter where they stand on the issue, I think people are generally fed up with this new normal, let's call it, right?
Yeah.
And, if they hear, listen, all restaurants are closing down again, it's probably not going to go great.
Yeah.
And listen, we're going to close the court system, and all the pending cases, everybody just kind of has to sit on their hands and wait. That's not going to be great either.
We're already 3 years behind, so just add to a backlog of services. People that pay taxes for this type of service, and everybody thinks about the court system. A lot of people think about the court system as just people who get arrested. We're talking about family court. We're talking about civil court. We're talking about small claims court, matrimonial, all types of things that are a lot of it's been on holding, and then throw in the housing, the rent moratorium. It's going to be an absolute disaster when that figures itself out. What are some of your goals for 2022? Generally speaking, as a union for AME, we've worked on a number of initiatives in the past. Like I said, we found real success in doing so. Where do you see the need for unions to coalesce around an issue for all working men and women?
Well, listen, one of the things that we've been talking about has been the issue of the single-payer bill, which I wonder how that will look this year, considering how the election cycle went just recently. But that notwithstanding, if something like this goes through and labor doesn't have a voice, isn't at the table to say, hey, years of, I don't think it's not a well-kept secret that public sector employees make less money than private sector folks do doing the same exact job.
Right.
And what we did was we negotiated certain health care benefits that we have and maintained instead of wage increases. That's how we got that disparity. If we then turn around and give that away, we've given away our collective bargaining rights, and we've given away value that needs to be returned to us. So that's a conversation that needs to definitely needs to be all of labor involved in this. And when we say labor, organized labor, private, public, but working folks.
Yeah, across
everyone,
the spectrum.
Any job,
Uniform, civilian, public, private, we're all in the same boat. It's really, tries to be the running theme of this program is we're all in the same boat.
Yes.
You represent 900 some odd titles. I represent one really, and we're in the same boat.
We're in the same boat.
We're in the same boat. But here's the thing: it's always good having a conversation with you on these matters. We both enjoy getting to the deep end of these discussions, and as always, I look forward to working together as we move forward. What's your organization's website for the audience to reference?
So our organization's website is SuffolkAME.com.
And like I had said, so many of our members are Suffolk County residents. I urge you to look up the Suffolk AME Union website. If you see something on there that you like for our union, give me a buzz.
Right.
Shoot me an email. Because, like I said, we're all in the same boat. We work in the same circles. I know Dan a long time now. You do a tremendous job for your union. I thank you for joining me in your court. That's the end of today's show. We'll talk again, Dan.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We air Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at noon right here on AM 970 The Answer. And for information about our organization, it's nysscoa.org. Join us next week for more In Your Court.